Ասա թող քեզ էլ աղբորդ լակոտի նման տանեն փակեն։ Այդպես մի քիչ ավելի երկար կա։
Ձեզ առաջարկում եմ մեր նոր Berg Smart Inverter 2 մոդելը։ Այն իր ինվերտորային օդամը
Քեզ որ սազական պահվածք է ցուցաբերում, հավատանեմ չի կարելի։
Իսկ ինչ անեմ
Դու չես զգում, որ մենք պետքա խոսանք։
Այն օրը երբ որ տղես մեզ
Ինչ ես խոսում այ խեղկատակ։
Բայց ինչի ես վիրավորում, հա? Ինչ ես
Մենակ չասես, որ Գրիշի հետ վատ
Grish just told Manan, in front of everyone, that he believes she got rid of their baby on purpose, and that accusation is not going to stay contained inside that hospital room in Germany. I am telling you with full confidence, based on everything this story has shown us about how information travels in this family, that within one episode, this exact sentence is going to reach Ina, it is going to reach Vova, and it is going to reach David. And every single one of them is going to react in a completely different way that pulls this entire family further apart than it has ever been before. This is not a small fight between two grieving people anymore. This is the moment where Manan's entire place inside that family gets put on trial by the person who was supposed to love her the most. Before I go further, let me ask you something quickly, the way I always do. Tell me in the comments where you are watching this from right now, because I genuinely read every single one of them. I reply when I can, and I want to know exactly how far this story is traveling across the world with all of you watching it beside me. Now let's go back to that hospital room in Germany, because what just happened there is going to echo through every single storyline we have been following. Think about what Manan has survived just to get to this point. She lost her pregnancy in the worst possible way, alone in her grief while her family whispered around her instead of holding her up. She stood in a hospital hallway and let Geragin humiliate her without breaking. She absorbed Ina's cruelty without flinching, and she has spent this entire arc proving that she is stronger than every single person who has tried to make her feel small. And now, the one person who should understand her pain better than anyone else, the man she was supposed to build a family with, wakes up from a coma and instead of asking if she is okay, instead of asking how she survived those days without him, he throws the worst possible accusation directly at her chest. I do not believe Manan is going to stay quiet after this. I believe this is the moment her character finally stops absorbing everyone else's cruelty and starts pushing back with everything she has been holding inside since the very first time this family made her feel like an outsider in her own life. Now here is where it gets complicated, because Grish is not speaking from a place of clarity right now. He just came out of a coma. He is disoriented, he is in a country he does not fully understand, and the very first thing anyone told him about his own child was filtered through panic and confusion rather than truth. Someone planted that seed in his head before Manan ever had the chance to explain it to him herself, and I do not think that happened by accident. Remember how desperate this family has been to control every single narrative that reaches the people they are trying to protect? Someone in that circle around Grish decided it was easier to let him believe Manan chose to end that pregnancy than to let him hear the real explanation from her own mouth, and that decision is going to blow up in their faces the moment the truth comes out properly. I want you to think carefully about who benefits from Grish distrusting Manan right now. Think about who has spent this entire story trying to isolate people from each other, trying to make sure information never flows cleanly, trying to keep every character slightly confused about who actually loves them and who is simply using them. Ina has done exactly this pattern over and over again with Leah, with Vova, and now it looks like the same poison is spreading into Grish's recovery. If Ina, or someone working alongside her, planted doubt in Grish's mind before Manan could reach him, that is not concern for a grieving family member. That is strategy. That is someone making sure Manan stays weak, stays isolated, stays exactly where she cannot fight back, while the rest of this family handles business that Ina does not want interrupted. And that business, I believe, is about to become the center of everything, because Hunan is still lying in that hospital bed unconscious, and every single day he stays that way is a day someone in this story gets to keep controlling the narrative without him. Vova already made it clear, with a coldness that honestly gave me chills watching it, that whoever was behind that explosion is going to be punished in the most brutal way possible. That is not a son grieving quietly. That is a son who has already decided he is done waiting for the truth to come out on its own. And I believe the next episode is where Vova starts actively hunting for answers, instead of just reacting to whatever gets thrown at him. Let's talk about Avo again, because his behavior in the last episode was almost too calm for a man supposedly worried about his best friend fighting for his life. Remember what he said standing outside that hospital, telling Hunan directly to his unconscious face that he hopes he does not wake up? That was not a slip of the tongue. That was not dark humor born out of grief. That was a man speaking his real intention out loud because he genuinely believed no one who mattered was listening. Ina heard part of it, and I do not think for 1 second that she is going to let that comment disappear quietly. She has spent this entire story surviving by remembering every single thing anyone says against her family, filing it away, waiting for the exact right moment to use it as a weapon. Avo just handed her one of the sharpest weapons he could possibly give her, and I believe she is going to use it the moment it benefits her most. Here is something I need you to sit with for a second, because I think it changes how we should be reading Avo's entire arc going forward. Every single time this story has put Hunan in a vulnerable position, Avo has been suspiciously close by. He was near the family the night of the explosion. He was the one pushing information around before anyone had confirmed facts. He is the one who keeps circling Olga with a comfort that goes far beyond simple friendship. And now, standing right in front of Hunan's unconscious body, he openly wishes for his death. A man who truly feared consequences would never say something that damaging out loud, not even in a moment of raw emotion, unless he has already convinced himself that Hunan is never waking up to repeat it. That confidence is what worries me the most. Avo is acting like a man who already knows the outcome, not a man hoping for one. Now, let's bring Manon back into this picture, because I believe her storyline and Avo's storyline are about to intersect in a way that shocks everyone watching. Remember the argument between Manon and Ina, the one where Manon screamed that she is not Ina's biological daughter, and Ina never actually denied it. She simply deflected and attacked instead of clearing the air. That silence has been sitting there for episodes now, waiting for someone to finally address it directly. With Hunan unconscious and unable to control the family narrative the way he always has, and with Grish now emotionally distanced from Manon because of this accusation, Manon is more isolated right now than she has been at any point in this entire story. Isolated characters in this kind of story are exactly the ones who end up discovering the truths everyone else has been hiding, because they have nothing left to lose and no reason left to protect anyone's comfortable lies. I believe Manon is going to go looking for answers about her own past, pushed by the desperation of being disbelieved by the one person who was supposed to trust her unconditionally. And I believe the person she turns to, whether she realizes the danger of it or not, is going to be Avo. Think about it. Avo has already shown an almost obsessive interest in every child connected to this bloodline. Vova, Mark, and every conversation he has ever had about family always circles back to guilt, to debts, to things he claims he could not control. If Manon starts asking questions about where she really came from, Avo is exactly the kind of man who would insert himself into that search, offering comfort with one hand while hiding the real answer with the other, the same way he has done with every single person in this story who trusted him even slightly. Let's shift to Leah for a moment, because her position in this family just became incredibly complicated. Her father is lying unconscious in a hospital bed, and for the first time in this entire story, the fear that controlled every decision she made about Leo has lost its grip on her. Fear needs a source, and right now, the source of that fear cannot speak, cannot threaten, cannot control anything. I believe Leah is going to reach out to Leo in this episode, not with the same desperate emotional collapse we saw before, but with a quieter, more determined honesty, because grief and uncertainty have a way of stripping people down to what they actually want once the person holding them back is no longer standing in the room. And when Leo hears from Leah again, after everything Hunan put that family through, after everything Avo stirred up between the two households, I do not think Leo is going to react with simple relief. I think he is going to react with suspicion first, because this entire story has taught every single character that trust is the most dangerous thing anyone can give away too quickly. Now here is where I want to bring in a detail that I think most viewers have completely underestimated. Remember when Ina screamed at Avo outside the hospital, telling him that everyone, including him, is going to answer for what they have done? That was not an empty threat born out of stress. Ina has resources, connections, and a level of ruthlessness we have consistently underestimated throughout this entire story. She has already proven she is capable of manipulating information, capable of showing up uninvited in places she has no business being, capable of psychological warfare dressed up as concern. I believe Ina is about to make her first truly aggressive move in this story, not against Avo directly, because that would be too obvious, but against the people closest to him, the people he actually cares about, which narrows down to almost no one except possibly Olga and, through her strange fixation, Vova himself. Think about how devastating it would be if Ina, in her desperation to protect Hunan's legacy and control the narrative around his condition, decided the fastest way to destroy Avo was to turn his own obsession against him. If she used Olga as leverage, if she used the closeness Avo has been building with Vova as a weapon, instead of letting it remain a slow manipulation on Avo's part, the entire dynamic of this story flips. Suddenly, the predator becomes prey. Suddenly, the man who has spent years circling this family like a patient hunter finds himself being hunted by someone even colder than he is. And this is where I think the biggest twist of the coming episode is hiding in plain sight. We have all been watching Avo as the villain of this story, the manipulator, the man responsible for Raphael's downfall, the man who abandoned Vova, the man who cannot stop inserting himself into every tragedy this family experiences. But what if Avo's obsessive presence around every crisis is not because he is causing them? What if it is because he is the only person in this story who actually knows who is causing them and has been circling close enough to watch, to gather proof, waiting for the exact moment he can use it? Every villain needs an origin story, and Avo's entire arc has been built on desperation, poverty, and guilt over choices he was forced into by circumstances outside his control. What if the real architect behind Raphael's death, behind the debts, behind the decades of silence, was never Avo at all, but someone standing much closer to Hunan than anyone in this story has considered? I believe the explosion outside Hunan's car was never about revenge for something recent. I believe it traces back decades to the exact same story Avo has been telling everyone about Raphael's debts and the men who were never named. What if those men were never faceless street criminals at all? What if the real debt Raphael owed, the real reason his life spiraled into violence, connects directly back to Hunan himself, years before any of the characters we know now ever crossed paths? If that is true, then Ina is not protecting Hunan out of loyalty or love. She is protecting him because she has known this truth for years, maybe even longer than anyone else in this story, and she understands better than anyone what happens to this entire family the moment Hunan wakes up and finally has to answer for it.
That would explain everything. It would explain why Ina has fought so viciously to control every version of the truth that reaches outside her own household. It would explain why she reacted with such controlled fury rather than shock when Hunan accused her of possibly being involved in Ashat's death. Because guilt does not panic the same way innocence does. Guilt calculates. It would explain why Avo, despite being hated and humiliated by nearly everyone in this family, keeps coming back, keeps inserting himself, keeps watching from just close enough to see everything unfold, because he already knows the truth, and he is waiting for the moment it becomes useful rather than dangerous to reveal it. So here is what I believe is coming in the next episode, and I want you to remember every single piece of this, because I think it is going to hit exactly where I am predicting. Manon, pushed to the edge by Grish's accusation and the isolation surrounding her, is going to start digging into her own past, and that search is going to lead her, whether she intends it or not, straight into Avo's orbit. Grish, still recovering, still confused, is going to start hearing a second version of events, one that contradicts what he was originally told, and that contradiction is going to force him to question who actually fed him that first accusation against Manon in the first place. Leah is going to reach out to Leah, quietly, carefully, testing whether the fear that controlled her for so long has truly lost its grip now that her father cannot enforce it from that hospital bed. And Vova, driven by a coldness we have never seen from him before, is going to start pulling threads that lead him closer and closer to a truth that connects Raphael's death, Ashat's death, and the explosion outside his father's car into one single devastating pattern that this entire family has been too afraid to look at directly for years. And the twist, the one I believe changes everything we thought we understood about this story, is that Hunan Makuntz is not going to wake up peacefully. I believe he is going to wake up mid-conversation, in the exact moment someone in that hospital room is whispering something they never wanted him to hear, and the first word out of his mouth is not going to be a name we expect at all.